Well, good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to everyone. I'm Hugh Edwards from Gomo Learning, and welcome to our latest in our series of weekly mini demos, where each week we have a look at different aspects of Gomo. And welcome to all. This is designed both for people who are completely new to Gomo, so maybe you're just exploring what features Gomo has and whether it could be right for you, but it's also designed for existing customers who might want to refresh their knowledge about different aspects of Gomo, but even discover new features that you haven't used before. But whoever you are, you're very welcome here. And we've had a huge registration for today's subject, which is why responsive e-learning is vital in the modern workplace. So we'll be getting going in just a minute or so. We'll just give a bit of time to make sure everybody who wants to can tune in. Just while we're doing that, I just want to check that you can see and hear me. So if you can hear me and see my screen, if you could just raise your hand, you can see the little hand raise icon there in the GoToWebinar panel. And if you could just click that so I can just check that everything's working while we're waiting for everybody else to come along. Okay, that's great. I can see quite a few hands going up there. And also, we're going to be using the question panel that you'll see in your GoToWebinar box as well. So please feel free to add comments, ask questions in there, and we'll try and monitor that as I go along. And I can see that we have quite a few more people still tuning in, so we'll just give it a bit longer. So welcome to everybody who's just joining us. We'll be getting going in just a moment on this week's Gomo webinar. And I can see that we have lots of people still tuning in. So we shall get going in just a moment. This is being recorded as well, so if anybody would like the recording, do just contact us at gomolearning.com. And I can see that we've got still a few more just tuning in there, which is fantastic. Okay, well, let's make a start because I've got a lot that I want to show you today. So again, to welcome you formally, I'm Hugh Edwards from Gomo Learning. I run business development here at Gomo. And as I mentioned to you, those of you tuned in early, then these are our weekly demos where we look at different aspects of Gomo, both for people who are entirely new to Gomo, but also for existing customers who are looking to refresh their memories about features of Gomo or explore new features. So today we're looking at why responsive e-learning is vital in the modern workplace. So by responsiveness here, we're talking about having e-learning content which is going to run across any screen size and any device, because responsiveness in e-learning isn't anything new. And we all know about the benefits of it, but then I know that talking to customers and potential customers, that it can be quite a challenge to be able to deliver that content on whatever screen or device learners are using. And because workplaces have really changed considerably over the last few years, and responsive and engaging access anywhere content is more important than ever for organizations who want to maximize learning uptake and results. But so it's no longer a nice to have, that we all just expect it. And quite honestly, for those of you who've been around this industry as long as I have, you may recall the old days where organizations had computer-based training rooms, as they used to be called back in the day, where learners would go along and they'd sit at a computer connected maybe to a videotape recorder or even a laser disc player, if you remember that far back. And I mean, the good news is that those days are long gone. But we still don't want to have to go to our desktops to be able to do a piece of compliance training. That we expect to be able to sit on our sofas and just access the learning from tablets and phones as we would any news item or social media feed. And the good news is that Gomo was actually built with this in mind right from the start. So right from the first versions of Gomo, it was designed to help you create content to work on any screen and any device. So let's have a look at just what we'll be covering today in the next half hour. So we're going to have a look at just exactly what we mean by responsiveness and discuss about the difference between a responsive and another term that you'll hear is adaptive content. And we'll do that by having a look at some examples of content in Gomo so we can see that actually happening in real life. And then we're going to jump into Gomo itself, and we're going to have a look at building a Gomo course and also design considerations there through Gomo's responsive layout. We'll be having a look at the notion of blocks and columns. And then, particularly for existing customers, we're going to just delve in a bit further to look at how you can customize that multi-experience device by using display conditions. So let's just jump in first of all and have a look at just some examples that we can see what we mean by responsiveness and adaptiveness. And again, for those of you who just joined, welcome. And do feel free to ask questions in the question panel there. I'll be monitoring that as we go through. So let's jump into an example. So here we're going to look at an example here, as you can see, Godiva chocolates, very nice clean example, but also it shows very nicely about responsive and adaptive content in Gomo. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into the menu. And what we're going to see here is both the structure of a Gomo course. So remember that a Gomo course consists of these top-level building blocks, which we call topics. So we have a topic about ancient times and modern times and so forth. And those topics can be linked together in different ways, like we have here as a menu. And the key thing we're interested in today is that we can see that we have this column layout. We've got 4 columns. And this is a key thing. This block and column layout is how Gomo makes sure that this course is going to run across any screen and any device. So here we're looking at the desktop view. But if I just adjust my window size, as we come down towards the tablet view, it just automatically reflows the text, so you don't get text cutoffs and text overruns. And by the way, this can be really important as well if you're delivering a multi-language course in Gomo. People are always worried that, well, what happens if I have a German version of the course in there and the learner switches into German? German tends to have longer sentences. Am I going to get a cutoff? No, Gomo just reflows the text, whatever the language. And don't forget that we also have other webinars in our weekly series that look at multi-language content in Gomo. Now here, the key thing is if I go down to a smartphone screen size, notice that it still completely fills the screen. So it doesn't just try and squeeze everything into a little mini desktop size where I have to pinch and zoom or try and figure out what's going on there. It still completely fills the screen, but what it's done, it's just reflowed those columns. So the columns stack one on top of the other. So from the learner's point of view, it's a simple swipe up and down. So I can see this is going to be a great experience even for learners on smartphone. And the crucial thing is this is happening automatically. We haven't had to build the desktop version, then move everything around for a tablet version, then move everything around again for a smartphone. It also means that as new models of smartphone in particular release, we don't have to start adjusting them because suddenly we've got a whole new iPhone Max screen size and so forth. Gomo is going to, in that sense, future-proof you as well. And you can see here, if I go back to desktop view, it automatically goes back by side columns. So that's what we mean by responsiveness. So I'm just going to go into one of these topics here. And we'll just have a look at this a bit further. So here that in desktop view, we have the screens here, and here we're using what we call continuous scroll. Gomo joins together the screens and the topic. So from the learner's point of view, it's a nice, elegant swipe up and down or scroll up and down. But what I want to show you here that we have, this is what we call a film strip asset. So Uh, this is designed to show a sequence of images with associated text to be able to group information together. Now that works really nicely on the desktop here. And Nikki, I see that you've asked a question about could you send me the recording? Yes, be very happy to do that. And anybody else who would like the recording sent, do just pop a message there in the question box and make sure that we send that to you when it's available. So the film strip here was working nicely on desktop. I can go to a tablet size. That's still working nicely there. Now, the challenge that we would have here in a smartphone view, if we simply scaled down this film strip, is that we'd end up with sort of absolutely tiny little buttons, which might be really tricky to click or tap on a smartphone screen size. And this is where the Gomo notion of adaptive content comes in. So we've seen that we have responsiveness in terms of just reflowing the layout and the blocks and columns to fit the screen. But now what we'll see here, if I go down to a smartphone size, notice here that it's automatically adapted that film strip. So it's become a simple sequences of images and associated text. I'm not trying to tap tiny little buttons to navigate through the film strip. So here the film strip is adaptive. So Gomo is automatically re-rendering it to give the best experience on the particular device and screen size, in this sense, a smartphone. So that's both responsive and then that's adaptiveness, and that can be a key thing to look out for in your authoring tool, and also in Gomo. The fact it's great, it just does it for you. And the key thing, the key message is you focus on the learning content. Gomo takes care of the responsiveness and adaptiveness. Just before we jump into Gomo itself, let's actually go and have a look at another example, one that looks very different. As you can see, this is for Jaguar, nicely branded with through what we call a theme, all the right fonts and colors. And again, we explore themes in other webinars. But the key thing here is this is designed to be used in a showroom context, typically on a tablet, but also a smartphone to use by salespeople to engage customers in conversations about the vehicle. And again, we can see that the way that this is going to work in terms of, again, this block and column layout. So here you can see that we have rows of 3 columns. And so in desktop view, we get 3 columns side by side. Tablet view, it just reduces down the actual area of the columns. But if we go to smartphone, then we get that responsive layout. It simply stacks those columns one on top of the other. So this is still completely usable even on a smartphone. And if I go back to the desktop view, again, it just reflows those columns. So the crucial thing here is the notion of block and column layouts to give us our responsiveness across screen sizes. But let's jump into Gomo. Let's see how Gomo does this for us, and also some design considerations from a learning design and content creation point of view. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to go into my Gomo account. So remember that Gomo is entirely cloud-based, so you don't install any software. All you need is a browser and internet connection. I happen to be on a Mac using Safari. Obviously, you could be on a PC using Edge and Chrome and so forth. And we can organize our courses into folders, maybe by subject area or team member. But the important thing here is I'm just going to create a new course, and then we'll have a look at those design considerations. So first of all, I'll just give it a name. Just call it responsive. And again, this is where if we're building a multi-language course, we could tell Gomo what languages we wanted to add to it. I'm going to make it a single language course. This is where we select the theme, the style template that we're going to apply to our content. Because again, in the same way as we can just focus on the content and Gomo takes care of making sure it works across any screen and any device, the theme is going to mean that we focus on the content and Gomo takes care of the look in terms of fonts and colors and so forth. And one thing I would point out to our existing customers, we've just released a new standard theme called the Brissa theme here. and that has a whole new look and feel. So I would recommend that you explore that. You can, of course, make a copy, your own copy of that, and use the theme editor to change colors and so forth. But well worth having a look at. It has a very, very modern feel to it. But for today, I'm just going to take one of the built-in themes, the tempo theme. Click next. This is all about the structure. So remember these top level building blocks called topics, which in turn are going to consist of a sequence of screens that are going to change their size across different screen and device sizes. So here I'm going to say I want an introduction, I want a menu. I'm going to just take 3 topics to start. These are the elements that are going to appear in the toolbar. But here I'm going to take the default. So I click create. And now Gomo is going to look at those initial decisions to do with the number of topics, the theme that's going to be applied to it. It's going to create an outline structure for with some sample content just to get me going. So here's our top level view. Remember, these are topics, they contain screens. So I've got an introduction leading to a menu. I have simple branching here. Of course, I could have more complex branching. I could have subtopics. I could even have what we call dynamic branching, and we look at this in one of the other webinars. So look out for that if dynamic branch is important to you. For example, when you go into the course, it could prompt the learner for them to select their job role or job function. Gamma could remember that choice, and then using a technique called display conditions, which we'll be looking at in a moment, then what the learner sees on any given screen and even that whole journey through the course can depend on the choices they've made. Gomo's added in some content. So what I'm going to do here is just to say preview this. So it's just going to open up another tab. It's going to then apply the theme to that sample content. And of course, we can then just flick between the different views here. So we can go between the structure view where we see the top level view. This is also how we'll get into the editor. And then also we can flip to the preview. So here we go. This is the sample content Gomo's put in. So the look and feel of things like the colors being used on the buttons and the fonts, that's all coming from that theme I've chosen. We've already got some help content there ready for us to edit. Easy to put in a glossary of terms and definitions the learner can look up at any point. We've got a slide out table of contents and so forth. And here we've got our menu with our menu buttons. Again, the look and feel is coming from the theme. But the key thing I want to show you here is about the block and column nature. So here, as we saw in those examples, you can see that we've got a block with a single column, got a block with 2 columns, and now things like the color and transparency on the columns, that's all coming from the theme. We can change all of that. The crucial thing is looking at the layout here. So here at the top left, I can see that I am in desktop view. But I can just choose to change that to say, okay, well, what would happen if my learners were looking at this on a typical tablet? So again, we can see Gomo's just reflowed the text there. And I can say, well, what happens if they rotate, say they rotate their iPad? Okay, it still fills the screen. There's still enough space to have 2 columns side by side. But now if I go down to a smartphone size, again, we can see this behavior. Gomo has automatically just reflowed the block and column, so we have the right-hand column appearing underneath the left-hand column. Also, it's automatically adjusted things like the help, so that all fits in there, and the glossary. So I can see that this is going to be a good experience even on a smartphone here. So Gomo's automatically adjusted our content there. So let's go in and have a look at what that means for you when you're actually building content in Gomo. So I'm going to go back here and I'm now going to go into edit one of these topics. I'm just going to click on the first content topic. Again, it just opens up another tab and we're going to have a quick guided tour here. And in particular, we're going to be having a look at the block and column structure. So here on the left-hand side, I've got my navigator panel. This is showing me the screens that I have in this particular topic. So Gomo's added in just some sample screens for me. I can add in as many of my own as I want there. But the key thing here is when I click on a screen, it loads up the content into the content area. Now, the crucial thing here is there is no canvas size to this. This isn't a 1600 pixel canvas. I'm not having to worry about positioning this text here, maybe 100 pixels from the top, 50 pixels from the left, because that might be fine for a desktop view. But then if you're then trying to deliver that on smartphone, it's either you're going to have to build a completely different version for smartphone, or it's just going to shrink everything down, making the whole thing completely unreadable. So instead, what we have here are these blocks and columns. So when I click on one of these blocks here, like the top block there, it's showing me that I can divide this into a number of columns. So you might just see that that's dividing in up to 4 columns. And of course, that then gives me placeholders where I can put my other elements, what we call assets in Gomo. And of course, that's how it's going to reflow the content across screens and devices. So particularly if you're new to Gomo, I'd recommend just experimenting with this block and column structure, because if you've come from using a tool which is based on pixel positioning and fixed canvas, it might seem a bit limiting at first, as in, well, why can't I just position this text exactly here? And until you realize that actually this is great, because it means that you just know that this content will work on any device and you don't need to worry about it further. So also the other thing here is that we have the instant preview here. So I can immediately see how that's actually going to look with the particular theme applied there. So we've got the block and column layout there. And here, what I want to do here is just to delve a bit further into slightly more advanced topic here, which is to do with the notion of display conditions. Now, display conditions in Gomo are ways to be able to show and hide things on the screen based on certain things happening. But where we want to use this here is to refine the experience on different devices. If I just go back to here to the preview, we can see here that with this default content that we've got text on the left and we've got the image on the right, and it sort of balances it visually quite nicely there. And we can see that that's also true, say, with the tablet. Again, it's, you know, it gives it a sort of better visual appeal. But if I go down to a smartphone size, yes, it reflows the layout, but I could say, well, it just involves a bit more swiping for the learner. Is this really adding much to the actual learning itself? So what I could do is say, right, okay, let's just enhance that or refine that for the different views. So if I go back in here, then one thing that I could do here is to say, well, actually, maybe I just want to just have different views of the text depending on the device. So here, what I could do is to just going to copy this text, and I could say, well, if I'm on a desktop view, I've got lots of room, and I can have maybe lots more text in there, expand on the whole topic. And I could also then say I can add in some more text. I'm just going to refine this. And this is going to be, say, for my tablet view. So on the tablet, I might just want to shorten it to Prescient a bit. So I might say that actually I can remove that text. So on tablet, I'm just reducing the text just to avoid having too much text on the tablet screen size. And then finally, I'm going to say, well, actually, if somebody's on a smartphone, then actually they could well be looking at the learning on the move. And rather than swiping through a lot of text, maybe it's going to be better just to give them key bullet points here. So here I just want to edit this. We'll put in the bullet points in the text editor. And I'm going to, again, reduce the text even further. So we get really, really tidying up the text, making it particularly punchy for somebody on the smartphone. So I've got 3 pieces of text here. Obviously, I don't want these to appear at the same time. If I just left it at this, then every user on every screen size would see 3 pieces of text. We don't want to do that. So what we're going to do is just add this refinement. And remember that you don't have to do this in Gomo. This is just to refine the experience for your learners. So here, for the desktop text, what I can do here is to add in what we call a display condition. So for all of these elements, these assets, you'll see a set display condition. Lots of different ways we can show or hide this based on certain things happening. One that we're interested in here is device type. So I'm going to say, if you're looking at this on a desktop, show this text. I do the same with the tablet text. If you're looking at this on a tablet, show that text. On the smartphone, same principle, add a device-based display condition to say, show that if it's a smartphone. So what we should see here is that the text you see will depend on the actual device that you're using. Also, with this image, looking at it as thinking, well, it's okay on desktop and tablet, but it's not really adding much on smartphone. It's just adding a bit more swiping. So again, as a refinement, I can click on the image, I go to set a display condition, and now I can use the device type. Now here I can use some logic to say, show that image if it's not being viewed on a smartphone, namely if it's a tablet or a smartphone. So it's not a smartphone, show the image. If it is a smartphone, don't show the image. So what I can do here is we'll just save that, and then we'll just go back to our preview, and we'll just refresh this. We'll just update that with our changes. So what I've done there, that we've seen that straight out of the box, the Gomo content will automatically reflow the layout across screen sizes. But what we're doing here is just having a look. Here, we'll just go into this, the way that we can refine that. So here we are in the desktop view. Now notice here, it's just showing that full desktop text, and it's showing the image. At the top here, if I say, show me the tablet view, okay, it looks as if I got my logic wrong there. We'll just check that. And and it's still showing the image. So here we'll just go down to the smartphone view. Now here, notice it's kicked in just that highly reduced bullet point text that I wanted on the smartphone, and there's no image there. So it's really punchy and to the point there for smartphone. If I go back to desktop, again, it goes back to the desktop text and the image there. And I think I probably just had a mistake on the display condition. Device type equals tablet, the tablet. Okay, so the principle there, though, is two things: that the Gomo course content will automatically be responsive, meaning it will respond to any screen size, any device. Where appropriate, it will be adaptive as well. So remember, we saw that example of the film strip, that on smartphone, it goes to a simple sequence of images with associated text. So it becomes a swipe rather than trying to click and tap on those tiny little images. And then as a refinement, we said, okay, let's take that a step further, and particularly say on smartphone, we might want to just hide content because maybe it's only there to balance the visual layout on desktop and tablet. And that's where we used our display conditions to attach it to elements just to trigger when it's going to show on what devices. So thank you very much for your time today. I'll just see whether there are any questions. So if you do have any questions at this point or any comments, please feel free to just type those in the question panel just before we close for today. Otherwise, I will say that just while I'm checking for questions, if you haven't tried Gomo yourself yet and want to experiment with these different techniques, you can sign up for a 21-day trial. Just go to our website, gomolearning.com, click on free trial. And if you'd like a personalized demo to discuss these points, then just click on the demo button and we'll get back to you about that. Or if you have a general question, then just use the contact us form there at the top. Also from here, you can find out about our future webinars here. So we'll see that here that coming up next week, we're going to be having a look at these this technique of variables in display conditions. So we touched on display conditions here, but we're going to be taking a deeper dive, this really powerful combination of variables and display conditions, particularly to create that dynamic branching I mentioned earlier. And we do have one question coming in from Tanya about if you can use your own fonts in the theme. In the theme editor, you can select from a wide list of fonts. At this stage, you can't upload your own fonts, but we are able to offer that as a service, either just to add in your font into an existing standard theme or as part of a whole theme customization there. And we do go into themes in depth here. It looks like we have one coming up in October. But Tanya, I can also send you the webinar recording of the previous session about themes to give you a better sense of that. And also, Kunal, you're asking, for localization purposes, is there a way that we can extract all the on-screen content at once, or do we need to manually extract the text? No, you can actually, Gomo has great support for creating a single course and making it available in multiple languages. And that can happen either by you doing your own translations directly in the Gomo editor through its cloud-based nature, or more typically, customers use our single-click translation export that extracts all of the text in the course. It downloads it in the so-called XLIF format, which is sort of the international standard for language translation, that you could send to any translation agency or load it into an XLIF editor, and you would be able to translate the text there. Single click, import that, and that gives you your translated course. And again, we in fact we'll be looking at that early October about translation and localization. Well, thank you very much. I realize we've gone slightly over time. Thank you very much for your great questions. And we look forward to seeing you again on one of our future weekly demos, same time on a Wednesday. So thank you very much, everyone.